You know, they say timing is everything. So, how timely that a huge exclusive article appears in the New York Times today, just like maybe an hour ago. Maggie Haberman, who used to cover Trump for years and was often called the Trump whisperer for some reason, is writing a book about Trump now. And she has published an article which to me actually sounds like a desperate effort to launder the reputation of two potential Republican presidential aspirants, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, and sort of throws everybody kind of under the bus as spineless, weak-kneed, or irrelevant. So apparently, Mr. Netanyahu showed up on February 11th and was taken to the Situation Room, which is unusual to have a foreign leader in a Situation Room. But I mean, can we at this point call Netanyahu a foreign leader, or is he in fact the co-president of the United States? Anyway, he was taken on February 11th to the Situation Room, and let me just read you a couple of paragraphs from this. In the Situation Room on February 11th, Mr. Netanyahu made a hard sell, suggesting that Iran was ripe for regime change and expressing the belief that a joint US-Israeli mission could finally bring an end to the Islamic Republic. At one point, the Israelis played for Mr. Trump a brief video that included a montage of potential new leaders who would take over the country if the hardline government fell. Among those featured was Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, now a Washington-based dissident who had tried to position himself as a secular leader who could shepherd Iran toward a post-theocratic government. Mr. Netanyahu and his team outlined conditions they portrayed as pointing to near certain victory. Iran's ballistic missile program could be destroyed in a few weeks. The regime would be so weakened that it could not choke off the Strait of Hormuz, and the likelihood that Iran would land blows against US interests in neighboring countries was assessed as minimal. Besides, Mossad's intelligence indicated that street protests inside Iran would begin again, and with the impetus of the Israeli spy agency helping to foment riots and rebellion, an intense bombing campaign could foster the conditions for the Iranian opposition to overthrow the regime. The Israelis also raised the prospect of Iranian Kurdish fighters crossing the border from Iraq to open a ground front in the northwest, further stretching the regime's forces and accelerating its collapse. Mr. Netanyahu delivered his presentation in a confident monotone. It seemed to land well with the most important person in the room, the American president. "Sounds good to me," Mr. Trump told the prime minister. To Mr. Netanyahu, this signaled a likely green light for a joint US-Israeli operation. The article goes on to say that after the Israelis left, Trump gathered his war cabinet. Rubio called some of the claims that the Israelis were making utter bullshit. The head of the CIA said it's farcical, that regime change would happen. General Caine, the top military advisor, said the Israelis tend to use hard sell all the time because they need us, and therefore it is sloppy and not well developed. Vance apparently wasn't even around. He was in Azerbaijan. Now, when he came back, according to the article, He was very against it and said he opposes this, but said to the president, if you go ahead with this, I will support you. So the bottom line is General Caine seemed to be arguing all sides of the arguments, never taking a clear position on what this would mean, but just laying out options. But knew very well that the Strait of Hormuz would be endangered, weapons supply would be endangered, that the regime change was farcical, so on and so forth. 2020 hindsight, right? Everybody knew that Hormuz could be endangered. Isn't 2020 hindsight wonderful? They're all claiming in these quotes that she's getting that everybody warned about the Strait of Hormuz, but Netanyahu said no, it's not going to be a problem. The way the Americans are behaving, does it sound like they even knew what the Strait of Hormuz was? So this is what is happening right now. Timing, timing, timing. What should worry us is why the need for Rubio and J.D. Vance to launder their reputation. Today, actually today. Everybody can go ahead and read this article that is entitled How Trump Took the US to War with Iran. I think it should probably be retitled How Netanyahu Took the US to War with Iran. Pakistan has been working night and day to try to stop the madness. Night and day. Say what you will. But right now, it seems to be the only country that is doing everything possible to stop the madness. Where is Europe? Where is the civilized world? Keir Starmer is busy tweeting about Kanye West and how he will not let the anti-Semite come to UK. Not a word about Trump's threat to erase Iranian civilization. Mr. Carney of Canada is doing the both sides thing. Mighty Canada is doing the both sides thing as Trump threatens genocide. The Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Merz, who arrived supporting this action against Iran. He was all in the White House. Not just all in, but also dissing Spain, laughing along with Trump as Spain was being abused. Where is Mr. Merz today? Where is Kaja Kallas of the EU? Maybe she's still crafting her message about how Iran shouldn't threaten civilization erasure. They can't quite figure out how to blame Iran for what Trump just said. Where is van der Leyen? Macron is in Asia, so I don't know what's going on with him. But it seems that Iran has released 2 French hostages. So clearly Macron is in talks with Iran and has managed to get 2 French citizens released, including a journalist who was kidnapped in Iraq was released as well. But clearly Mr. Macron is fixing his relationship bilaterally. Where is Europe? What about that NATO guy who came and lectured Americans that we should support Trump, and that NATO was all in? So Carney, who actually was the first one to jump in with both feet to support Trump and issue a yay long statement, is both sidings it. Merce is completely quiet. Where is Europe? Where is the civilized world? So Bahrain has been trying to ram through a resolution through the United Nations Security Council, backed by GCC, especially the UAE, to use force to open the Strait of Hormuz. And they have been trying to ram through this resolution. It was delayed last week. They tried it today. Pakistan, in its wisdom, abstained. Pakistan is not in favor of escalating military involvement, but has to balance and thread the needle. Pakistan abstained. China and Russia vetoed it. UAE has issued a hissy fit, very upset that this resolution did not go through. Not a word from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan about civilizational erasure that is being threatened by the President of the United States. This is where we are. So, New York Times helpfully launders a few reputations for presidential candidates for 2028. Bahrain and UAE and GCC is mad as snake because a resolution was vetoed and Pakistan abstained. Europe is MIA. Pakistan and perhaps Turkey working night and day to stop the madness. This is where we are at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time, in the US. We can analyze all of this as calmly, as rationally, and pull it all together. But this is having a really horrible impact on everyday people. I know people who are in tears because they don't know what's going to happen. Literally crying because they're so afraid. I'm getting messages from people saying they are terrified. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to stop this. We have a bloodthirsty president, an even more bloodthirsty Secretary of War and Death. We have a spineless Secretary of State. We have a Vice President who's not even in the country but is right now in the deep embrace of an autocrat. Congress is in recess. They are not even in Washington, D.C. The Democratic leadership, we don't know what they really mean with their do this, do that, he's sick, he's an idiot, he's this, he's that. I don't know. Does Chuck Schumer secretly support all of this? From what I remember, Chuck Schumer actually opposed Obama's JCPOA. Chuck Schumer stood up and clapped in a joint session of Congress when Netanyahu showed up in Obama's absence from the country. And Congress welcomed him, bipartisan, and stood up and clapped for him as he berated Barack Obama and the JCPOA. Chuck Schumer was right behind him, opposing the JCPOA. Chuck Schumer has clearly said that his most important task as the leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate is to make sure the Democrats line up behind Israel. This is what Chuck Schumer has said. So the Democrats today, we the voters, have no idea, really, where the leadership of the Democratic Party stands. There's nobody in Washington. Congress is on recess. Sure, there's a lot of talk about the 25th Amendment. For those who don't know, the 25th Amendment is that the cabinet can convene and say the president is impaired, either physically impaired or mentally impaired, and they can remove him from power. So a lot of talk about 25th Amendment. It's not going to happen. These sycophants will not let that happen because some of them really do believe in the apocalypse and Armageddon. And they do believe this is a religious war. They do believe the troops are fighting for Jesus. They do believe that they're carrying the flag of the Crusades. This is what is going on Tuesday afternoon. We have many hours to go, but I thought it was important to at least bring it together, especially with this New York Times article and the timing. Like I said, timing.